I'll start by introducing myself. I'm going to kind of host the panel today. The panel's on regional touring. My name's Chad Barton. I booked my first tour for a punk band out of Victoria that had been doing it for a lot of years prior to me turning 18. The reason for it was because Lethbridge was lacking something that I was desperate to have, which was a good fun time. It's the reason why I still do it, is to make sure it's a kind of a personal thing. I want to make sure and create that community, build friendships, and that connection piece is just so important to me. So Chad Barton, Dead End Productions, and touring. We all wear many hats. I'm just going to hand it over to my pal Vanessa, who's in from Vancouver, to maybe share some of the hats that she wears.
Oof, there are plenty. Some of them cowboy. You might notice the boots. One in Calgary. Yeah, my name is Vanessa. I book the Heatley, the Painted Ship, and a Rec Room location out in Vancouver. I have been a booker for the last decade, on and off, taking breaks to switch hats. I also play in a band called Vanessa D and the Brightsides. I played in a band called the Valentines for about 8 years, which was a sweet little family of miscreants that made it out to Calgary a handful of times, and it was really nice being in the Palomino last night. Had a lot of memories, some of them fuzzier than others. I also just launched a record label this year with my business partner. It's called Heartache #2 Records. When I first started working in music, it was really via an independent, like, boutique imprint vinyl label that was releasing my band's music. And I was really lucky to be involved in every step of that and have people, sort of like hold that door open and be like, when I had questions about why do we do it this way, or like, what is the process for that? It was never like, oh, well, like, don't worry about it. Like, it was just transparent. And I think just transparency and like sharing information and our own processes when it comes to approaching something like music, and all of the many facets that are around us. It's just like, we can all grow so much, just understanding each other's perspectives. There are so many people that do the same job as you, or an adjacent job as you, and understanding why they do the things that they do. It's just so inherent to fan culture, because we are all fans, like, first and foremost. I know for me, I'm always a fan first, and understanding how people relate to the things that they love.
Doing great.
It's just such like a beautiful, intricate dynamic, people's relationship as a fan. And being a fan first, for me, is where I come from in all of my projects. I think a lot of people in this room feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I'll pick up where Vanessa left off. Todd Menzies. I run Menzies Music Productions. Have done so for the last 12 years. Prior to that, was a musician myself as well. Toured around a lot. They always kind of go hand in hand, the same as Vanessa says. It was one of those things. I'm in Golden, BC, is where I'm based. But I took a 6-year leg and went out to Vancouver and joined Vanessa in the good fight out there. And through many good shows, I was the head of production for Timber Concerts for 6 years, and we put on some really rad shows, and Vanessa was a part of a lot of those. But then when the pandemic came crashing down on our industry, I decided to head back to the mountains and back to Golden, where I started it all. And when I started in Golden, there was a real big gap. I was just in bands, and there was other musicians and bands in the interior that you're 3 hours from Calgary, you're 4 hours from Kelowna, you're kind of in the middle and limbo there, and there wasn't anyone really picking up the slack as far as promoting and tour managing and booking bands. So I started with booking, and then it became artist management, which led into live music production, stage managing, and so on and so forth. Started a music festival in Golden called Golden Sound Festival, small little festival. I've had lots of Calgary bands, a lot of Edmonton bands, and ran into a few of them. Sean, who just spoke, played in Napalm Palm. He was there one year. So we kind of disbanded in 2018. We planned on doing a 2020 festival, but then obviously with the pandemic, it just didn't shake out and hasn't come back to life yet. But I run a new music series at the Golden Sky Bridge. It's a live outdoor concert series every summer, and always looking for bands. So it's nice to come here. Once again, Colleen invited myself to kind of touch on obviously the regional touring thing. and filling in the gaps between said cities, Calgary, Kelowna, Vancouver. Where do you play in between, and what's out there? So I think we'll touch a little bit on that, but in a nutshell, that's me and what I've done for the last decade or so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Colleen came out to Jasper this summer. I'd filled the gap for an artist out of the United States, Nick Shoulders, who we teamed up with in Portland. I've been going out to Pickathon in Portland for a number of years. Just a fantastic, like, for me, it just fills my cup in terms of the artists that I don't know, in a magical forest with, like, just surrounded by artistic genius. And so Nick and I had been talking for a couple of years, and my current goal in the work that I'm doing is, like, really trying to establish some good north-south routes in Canada to try to, like, get back to those 3-hour drives. That's what I think a lot of American artists are kind of used to. It's what makes it helpful when we get into Canada. Without those secondary markets, it can be a long drive, a grueling drive, and the expense that comes along with it. And so that's one of the things that, you know, my goal is to establish, and leaning on some pretty established artists to help that, primarily for the sake of the artists that I'm managing and other artists in Canada. Like, that's really it. Like, I want to have a thriving music community. The first tour I ever booked was in '97 for a band you guys might have heard of, Dayglow. It's like, to think that I ever managed a group of punk rocks like those guys at the age of 18. Like, nice. Okay, I gotta tell you, like, I had the luxury of a little rag. Like, I don't know if you remember the pullout in Maximum Rock and Roll called Book Your Own Fucking Life, you know, and that was it. Like, you grab that pullout and there'd be promoters and there would be, like, poster designers that you could just contact, and it was kind of that easy. It doesn't seem to be as easy. In our discussion yesterday, like, Vanessa and I, like, we're here to give away anything we have. We're not locking it up. If you want tour routes with contacts, contact us. We'll send it out. Like, we want to see everybody succeed. The hardest part for me in this job is saying no to anybody. I don't ever want to have to, but ultimately, I teach school. I've got 3 kids. I've got limited time resource to give to everybody, and so that's kind of where it lives. But the reason we're all here in terms of the regional touring aspect, I think secondary markets is where a lot of heart lives. Like, and there's actually a very interesting, like, correlation to the financial aspect of going into a market where maybe you've only got an 80-seater, but they're willing to pay an extra $10, $15 to come see you, and then they're going to buy all your merch because you came, and you make a connection fast, really fast in those secondary markets.
I think it's, like, really important just for the sustainability of the music industry, because I think, like, how many of us here grew up in a small town and felt really lonely and wanted to go to bright lights and be surrounded by people that felt the same way as us all the time? Your greatest fear is also often your greatest strength. I did not want to die alone in the middle of a field. I wanted to be in a room full of as many people that felt the same way as I did, and that is my entire purpose, apparently, on this planet, and I'm very lucky to have it. I think that, you know, as major cities get really expensive, and the art community is getting priced out. I live in Vancouver. Vancouver has a lot of great bands, because people that are in terrible bands who don't practice and don't have time and don't need to make music eventually give up. Because jam spaces are getting bulldozed for condos every day. You know, like, they're not giving out any more cabaret licenses. There's a moratorium on that. There's no more venues being created unless you're creating a DIY space. We do have a couple that are phenomenal that have stepped up to really fill that gap. But, you know, like, I often think, like, when eventually it gets too expensive for me to make art in the city, like, where am I going to go? Where's the next city that I want to go to? Like, don't you want to cultivate a space where, like, when you are tired of just the grind of being in the city, you can go there and you can still have that artistic community? And I'm not talking about, like, a hippy-dippy commune. You just look at a situation like Detroit, where all these, like, young artists have come in and taken advantage of, like, low rents and, you know, areas that people don't want to inhabit necessarily. And if we cultivate secondary markets, we can have more of those places. We have more stops, like Chad said, between all the long drives in Canada. It's often really difficult to convince American bands to come across the border with the exchange rate and the drives. But people like Chad create experiences. And again, I think it is all about the experience. Like, I know you had a band wake up camping with elk in their campground and they could not believe it.
Well, and that was a really, like, we do have a spectacular spot on earth. Like, it's absolutely magical. People like Nick Shoulders, if you don't know, check him out. But as we were driving through the ice fields, he had to like crawl into the back of the van and just cry. Like, he'd been he's such a history buff, and then to get there and like, man, hotel rooms, which is something that obviously is a hindrance in terms of touring. They're like $700 a night in Jasper. Like, you couldn't even find one. So I just packed up all the camping gear and set up in the campground. And they woke up to elk in the campsite, and it was the most amazing thing. So yeah, I mean, if you're ready to get to work with, if you have an artist that you wanted to showcase yourself, if you're a band that wants to tour, get in touch with an artist, team up. We'll hit you up we'll give you all the different contacts throughout, North America that we have, but team up with artists that you align with and put together those shows in those small regional markets. I loved, like, yesterday Vanessa was like, man, being that fan first, if you want to establish yourself in a market, become a fan in that market.
Totally.
Go travel to those spaces, watch shows there.
Like, the most important thing that you can do to establish contacts that are actual viable touring contacts is to look at the bands that you feel like are your contemporaries, or little pockets, like clusters of things happening that you are fascinated by, and like let that inspire you, and then go there. And if you're like on like the booking and promotion side of things, the burnout rate is high, and it is thankless, and it is all about celebrating someone else's hard work. And that is like, true fandom is religious devotion. And I'm not talking about, like praise Jesus stuff, because that's not my guy. But really and truly becoming a good fan is the most powerful thing. We all need more fans. We all need people buying the tickets. And once you are working in the industry for a while, you kind of lose sight of what it's like in other markets. And even if you're a band sort of like approaching a market that you've never played in before, things are going to be different. Certain things are going to be inherently true, but things are going to be different. And if you go to that place that you really want to play and inhabit as an artist, and you experience it as a fan, you're going to have a better understanding of how to approach it when you're trying to be there professionally. And I think that like just traveling is like, and I will absolutely acknowledge that it is a place of privilege, but you don't need to make a lot of money to go to places that you will fall in love with. The trade-off is that you will be a little bit heartbroken and homesick for a place that you don't live every day for the rest of your life. But God, that's worth it.
Todd, one of the things that I really appreciated in like advance of this was discussing some of those inroads with different art councils throughout British Columbia. You brought up the word series. That's something that I've like come to really appreciate and recognize has viability. If you can kind of create 2 shows, that could be a tour. It doesn't need to be 30 dates, but can you talk about some of these anchor shows?
Yeah, especially in the interior, there's a lot of the art councils are a really great avenue to tap into. Fernie has a great one, Revelstoke, Golden, Roslyn. They get publicly funded, a lot of grant money out there, so they need to spend it in a certain amount of time. And the nice thing about them is most of them fall on weekdays. So you can roll into Fernie, theirs is on a Wednesday, you can play and get paid decently. It's a built-in audience, and sometimes if you're able to get into that circuit and tap into those artistic directors, and it's a way of instantly building your fan base. You could go to Fernie and play the Northern 5 times and slowly, gradually get up to playing in front of 500 people. Or you could, really take the time and pick up the phone. A lot of the art councils, for example, They're a little more old school. A lot of them are, it's a semi-retirement stage of like, and I hope to be there one day and sit on an arts council board and do the same. But they're not glued to their computers and emails or Instagrams. Like, don't send an Instagram message to the Fernie Art Council and expect a reply, kind of thing. The best thing is if you can find the phone number of the executive director, pick her up and call Louise and be like, hey, then follow up with an email and send it to them. If you can get them on the phone, there's a good chance you can win them over and convince them to listen to your stuff. And then when they go to their computer and like, oh, that's Todd from such and such a band, and I'm going to have a look at it. And then you roll into a built-in audience, and you play. And then next time you come back to Fernie, you play the Northern, and you actually play to people. It's not easy, and sometimes people skip over it. They start booking tours, and we've all done it, and we're like, where's everyone playing? And you see the venues, you see the common things, but you don't look outside the box. So a big thing in small towns is looking outside the box. The same goes for ski hills. There's always a little town, but then there's always a ski hill, and in the summer it's biking, and in the winter it's skiing. And those hotels are full, and it might be just an après gig or kind of thing. A lot of times you can double up. You can play in Golden, you can play at Peaks at the ski hill in the afternoon after everyone's done skiing, 4 to 7, and then you come down and play the Rockwater at night, which is a really good way of doubling up. And the great thing about the ski hills, they're bringing people in from all over the world. They're bringing people, and I've had lots of Calgary and Edmonton bands come out and play my series. I book at the base of the ski hill, and they meet people from their own towns. They've come from Edmonton to play Golden. They meet people that are there skiing, and these people wouldn't necessarily go down to the Buckingham and watch a show, but they've seen this band because it's put out in front of them, and they've instantly made fans. And the next time they play the Buckingham in Edmonton, they'll be like, hey, we saw these guys in Golden. Let's go check it out. So I guess maybe you can just don't overlook those opportunities, even though they might not be career makers and the timing is strange.
Go ahead.
So just a question, but go ahead if it's in line.
My name is Lenore. I'm with Zenon.
Yeah.
About the going and playing at Ski Hill and playing at somewhere else,
Mm-hmm.
that can be done potentially. But how about radius clauses? I've come across some crazy ones.
Sure.
And you will, but a lot of places don't have it.
And Golden's one of them. Most of the time, I'm the promoter at both, and I recommend it. I was an artist. I know how the struggle is real, and the fact is, for example, in Golden, because I know it so well, if you're playing up at Peaks, those people that are sitting in those hotel rooms and watching you from 4 till 7 aren't coming down to the Rockwater and watching you from 10 till 1 a.m. They're up skiing at 9 a.m. kind of thing. So it's almost like two little towns. Obviously, you don't want to do it without asking said promoter, and most people, and the same goes for my music series I throw at the Golden Sky Bridge. If they want to go in and play taps or Rockwater in town, I ask that they ask. Obviously, some of those bigger acts that I have, I ask that they don't sometimes, and they completely understand, but only when I know personally I'm paying them good enough to not play 2 shows in one town. But if you're just making that minimum guarantee, or you're making percent of the bar or something like that, I'm not going to stop any artist from doubling up, making more fans, and making more money. And once again, it's just don't just assume it, just ask. And it might be a thing where people are afraid to but I don't want to ruin this chance or whatever.
No,
ask. And,
You'd be surprised what you can get just by asking, because people are often so caught off guard that you even thought to ask about that, or they may not even anticipated that's something that matters to you. So it's really a no worries if not situation. And actually don't worry about it, because the worst that happens is oh, I can't do that for you, sorry. Then you're exactly where you were before. As long as you're gracious about asking, it doesn't hurt to ask. Just the way everyone is going to ask questions of anyone else at this, just ask. You will get so much just because you asked, and the worst case scenario is you don't have the thing that you already didn't have. But one thing I want to go back to that you mentioned, and the word is circuits. Mm-hmm. Knowing the sort of circuits of regions, for example, one that I used to book a lot when I was doing fly-ins, bands from Toronto, bands from Texas, bands from LA. The Northwest Circuit is a really easy little stretch. You can fly someone in from basically any US major city into Seattle, and then you can do Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, Victoria, and that's a quick weekend. And you can if you can find a weekend circuit that is not super drive intensive, that you can get people paid on, that you have stable like connections with, like you can sort of drop into that region as an artist, or you can bring an artist into that region, and that's really valuable.
And I think it's quality over quantity in a way of shows. When I was in a band in Golden, we would often do circuits. We would dip down, we'd do Invermere, Fernie, Lethbridge, come back home. It was like the Thursday to Sunday window. And then we'd, come home and work day jobs or pick up cash jobs from Monday to Wednesday. And then we're like, okay, let's get back in the van on Thursday. Instead of trying to do like all of Western Canada, and then you're filling in so many Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, which are hard to book and everything. If you can like do that, and then the next circuit we go and hit Calgary, go up to Edmonton, Jasper, home. Okay, now we're going to do the interior. We're going to go to Revelstoke. We're going to go to Kelowna, Kamloops, and home Thursday to Sunday, and be more selective.
Totally, and once you like look at that, really like start looking at like what your anchor show or shows are, like. Again, like something I keep hearing in these panels is ask why. Like, why are you doing it? Like, are you going on tour because you just want to dick around and party for the weekend? Because that's totally fine and that's a great time, but like, you're probably not going to get that much out of it, aside from a really bad hangover. Maybe a little bit of merch sales, but like, are you touring because you're releasing something? Are you touring because you have a new song out? Are you touring because you have an album out? Are you touring because you have a video out? Like, what is the purpose of this tour? Like, are you trying to break into a new region? Like, because bookers are going to be more receptive if they're going to see that you have, like, a plan around this. Like, you can do a West Coast run and, it'll be great, but, like, what is the purpose of this tour? What are you doing this to promote? Did you get invited to one place that happens to be on that circuit, and now you have an excuse to go out there and you can reach out and sort of connect the dots? Like, you get a lot of cold calls as a booker, and I'm going to be honest with you. You give a lot of silence. I used to think that everyone deserved to answer. Sometimes you don't want my answer. You just don't. I'm not going to lie about that. But like, have a purpose for what you're touring on, even if it is just for the weekend. Like if someone like invites you to play a show in Victoria, and see if you can do up to Tofino and back. Fill in the dots in the circuit based around the purpose or the invite. You can go out and just tour for the sake of touring, but it's expensive and it's tiring, and you're not going to get what you want out of it without a reason for the tour.
So, watching Ryan play last night, that band is so incredible. Is Calgary his market? Is this region the best spot for him, or should that focus be creating a little lap in and around LA? Determine where people really enjoy your brand of music and just keep going there.
Yeah.
Kind of over and over, and establish a name for yourself in those places. I'm watching people like Bella White, or really just being like, I'm out. I'm just going to go there. And it's wild to me to hear Bella's name, knowing that she's a Calgarian, so tightly knit with so many of my friends that I've been working with out in New Orleans for the last 2 years, and she's now a fiber as a part of that, as if she was raised there. And I think that's important too, to find what region is yours.
Totally.
And I see it a lot in the ski town bands. There's a great band from Fernie called Shred Kelly. And I started bringing them to Golden maybe 12 years ago, and hosted them at an open mic. And over the 12 years, it's continued, and they'll hit all those ski towns, and they've built up and now they sell out shows. They in all the ski towns, they're just like gods in a way. They're like, oh my God, Shred Kelly's come to town, let's go. But when we brought them, Timber Concerts brought them out to Vancouver, it was impossible to sell tickets.
6 Australians.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, but you want to hit those markets because you still want to tap into those things, but don't stray from where you fit in. And they make their bread and butter, and they make their living, and they have their solid fan base in the interior of BC, and they tour it relentlessly, and then they poke out to Toronto. They'll fly out and play a few shows. They won't make any money, but they're trying to stretch and tap into them. But don't get discouraged by not being able to pull in Vancouver and Toronto when you're pulling hundreds of people in small towns, which the majority of bands from Vancouver and Toronto could never do.
Question on like, do you find that these venue owners, say on some of the circuits that you've already mentioned,
Yep.
are they open to kind of all styles of music, or are they kind of, would they prefer to have bands, say, as opposed to, say, like a solo act? Or is it kind of like they're more drawn to what your purpose is for that visit and what you're promoting and kind of your passion? Like, where do you see?
It's a great question because it's true, especially in Golden, for example. If Ryan came out to play with Rockwater, everyone would just sit around and be like, "What is this? Like what?" Kind of thing. Whereas if he landed in LA or Vancouver somewhere, and everyone would just be glued to him like they were last night, and I was last night, kind of thing. So venue owners and promoters are conscious of that, kind of thing. But there's always there's a spot in place for certain people. If you're a solo artist and you're coming out, it might be like a lot of times, and Chad and I were talking about this, is having early shows and late shows. If you're a solo singer-songwriter and you want to come out and play on a Friday, chances are the night's booked and someone's already playing it, call the promoter and be like, hey, I think I'd be a really great, dinner set and, lead up or opening set or whatever. There's often a place you can find slotted in, and if not, it might catch, like, when I run Golden Sound Fest, I brought in some really weird, different stuff. Whereas, because I know there's going to be a built-in audience. So I'm like, I'm going to bring Feverfield was a band from Calgary that I brought out. And I'm like, if I brought them out just to play a show in Golden on an any given Friday, it would be crickets and people wouldn't really get it. But because the venue was already packed with people and they got on stage, they instantly became, town favorites or whatever, kind of thing. So it might not be, and be like, might not work this time around, but hey, I got this event coming up this date. I think you'd be great for that.
I think I was just say further to that question, there are a lot of venues that are very specific, that exist to cultivate a specific scene. And regardless of what you want as like someone booking or running a venue, the room gets what it deserves. It's going to draw the people that want to be there. If you have like a straight up venue, you're not tied to any genre, you like that, the crowd will find you. The crowd that's meant to be there will find you. You will get the shows you deserve, for better or worse. But there are places that are very genre specific, and there are rooms that are great for, for heavy metal or for hip hop or for comedy or for whatever. And like once that room becomes known as being good for that one thing, you'll end up seeing a lot of that happening there because the nature of the room lends to the success of that kind of event. So, I mean, I think really what's valuable is to look at people that you consider sort of your artistic contemporaries and find out where they're playing. Find out where they play in their hometown. Really find out where are the things that you love happening in that city. Man. Like, what is the spot for the thing that you love in that place?
Yeah. Every time I see a tour get announced, I screenshot it and put it in a file. Yeah. And then just for exactly that reason, like if that's a genre that is going to fit, then I know that that's the route.
Yeah.
That's the size of room, and it's just that. It's just like boring and stealing. Yeah.
When I'm booking for myself personally, I want to play the rooms that the people I love currently doing the same things I do are playing. I'm like, man, that show looks like it was awesome. Like, who books that bar?
And in Vancouver, there's a place called the Lido on Broadway, and it's very similar.
So great.
And it's a psych bar. It's called that. And even on any given day, you're in there, and there's like trippy videos playing, and it's like psych music. I lived 2 blocks away from that for 6 years, and I constantly go there and discover new bands. And the thing was, at the time of being head of production at Timber, we were always bringing in bands from the US and everything. The amount of bands that I discovered there that would be great to open for a band, it was just like the asset that it was so valuable. Like just going down, having a beer, and be like, whoa. And it was always very similar. And I got to know the owners, I got to know the place so well. And there's so many times I would write the owner and be like, hey, I got this band. Not trippy enough, Todd. Sorry. I'm like, it's just, and it's true. And I couldn't respect it anymore. And I'm like, fair, kind of thing.
I want to take this question, and then I'm going to actually just looking at our time, because I came here to learn too. I want to know what's going on with you guys in the room. If there is a market that we haven't explored or don't know of, if you've got a show that you know of, if you're a promoter that wants to connect, I know that there's some festival promoters in here that want to connect and maybe bring in an act but need to get some support in terms of some secondary marketing. those sort of things. I want to hear about it.
Yeah.
I was just curious to ask, if you are planning to hit up some secondary markets, smaller towns, ski towns, etc., if your band has the capability to, say, have 1 to 4 hours of covered music in your back pocket, does that make those markets more accessible?
Totally can. And I've had some bands come, good friends of mine, Ben Sinister, they also, they've come to Golden before and they've had their set, you know, but they also have a cover band they call Fun Lord, you know, kind of thing. And it was a chance. We had a Friday and Saturday that were in Philippo and they had their show on Saturday. We knew it was going to be good. But they were like, what if we did Fun Lord on Friday and completely don't say anything about, you know, Ben Sinister or whatever. And it went off and we were able to fill 2 nights and people showed up for Fun Lord and saw Ben Sinister on stage, but it was completely different music and it worked so well. And it can go hand in hand, like you show up at an après style thing, people kind of, you got to win them over maybe with a cover or 2, you know, kind of thing. But once you bring them in, yeah. And I don't think certain places wouldn't be so conducive to it, but definitely in ski towns, being / cover band, or I've had people open up their set with something different than their headlining set, kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work with a band called the Bobby Tenderloin Universe, and the best part is when it organically just breaks down, and like there's so much talent in that band, and all of a sudden they start swapping instruments, and somebody else comes to the mic, and you end up. Those are the nights that you live for. Those are the nights that are unscripted, and
Yeah.
that's what keeps me in it every single day. Who's in the room? Do we have promoters? No promoters.
Oh, we need more of you, please.
You want, okay, all right. I'll say this.
Scared them off.
Artists, like bands. Do we have artists and bands in there? Okay, you're all promoters. You have to be.
Yeah,
And like honestly, like don't be afraid to like shoot a message to some dive bar in Mossley, you know, or like in Milo where there's like a tiny little room and you just never know. You might get 40 people out and have the time of your life that night.
And I think that really goes back to like, you know, being a good fan. Become a promoter. You want to be a band that gets asked to open for nationally touring artists? Draw a crowd. Be the person that brings your friends to shows. People come up to me while I'm working at the Heatley all the time. They're like, how do I play here? How do I get a show? I'm like, go to shows. Let me see you at shows.
Yeah.
Because if I don't see you at shows, you think I'm going to book you on one? Like, I'm not booking you on the show. You and your friends don't go to shows. So you're not going to bring any people to contribute to the room. So like, it's honestly like, if I see people that are like diehard fans and I know that they play music and I see them at a show and the next time that artist is coming through town and I'm thinking like, who really loves this band? I know I remember your face the last time I put on that artist, and you might get to open for them next time because I saw you singing along to that artist at the show.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is it too late?
No. You
Okay,
got this.
for like DIY kind of self-promoting bands and especially in the secondary, is it appreciated, like the BYOB, bring your other own
Yeah.
band, and reaching out, like, is that kind
Absolutely.
of a good way? Like, we got
Especially-
you, and do you want to leave room for the promoter of the venue to maybe have?
I mean,
third
if you
on their
have like
own?
a strong
What's sort of the-
other band that you are touring with, if you have like a good tour package, absolutely.
You've done
and
half
if
the
you
work
have
for us.
friends that play music in that city and you're like, hey, we're coming to town. My friend who's in X band is totally down to play with us. Like, I don't know if you know them, but like, hey, I really like to play with my friends. I'd really like to play at your bar. If you have friends in a band in that city already that is willing to play with you, like I'm already like 80% more likely. And like the first question I ask after I confirm band, I'm like, do you have any friends or bands locally that you'd like to play with? If you tell me bands like you're like, hey, I don't really know these people, but I saw them play once. I think they're great. I think they'd be great together. Like, I can reach out, or do you want to reach out? Like, I would like, because I am an artist, when I'm booking shows, I want to give artists as much sort of autonomy and like license to like surround themselves with their people. Because if you're having a great time with your friends playing music, everyone in the crowd is going to feel that. If you stick a bunch of random bands together and have a mixed bill, for whatever reason you have behind that, it's going to be strange, and you might make some really cool connections, but it's not going to be the same kind of magic as if you watched two bands sharing that night that really just we're fans of each other.
John?
Yeah, so I always used to be in bands, and now I'm just a one guy thing. And Chad knows because he had me come down and play on a bonspiel party before, which was great. And it's like a hip hop thing, and it's me, and it's my laptop, and I got a thing on the wall like with a projector, and I feel good about like I can get a room going and all that. But after 35-ish minutes, it's like, okay, we've looked at this guy, like there's no guitar solos, there's me, right? So I'm under no illusion that I should be the guy to step in and do a night. You know, I want to be on good bills, like that's just my long life now is what it is. So does this like get me out of the, like how does that change the formula in terms of who I should approach it now?
I think that like I would say you still like make sure that people that are in Fernie or wherever these markets are know who you are, and you just have to be ready to go when somebody has something for you. Like you're fun. Like people will want to watch. They'll want to have you on a bill, and it's just a matter of like making sure that something comes up.
So I can't be like, here's the Friday and Saturday and Sunday that I want to come through because you're gonna be like, you're not a problem solver for me because you're only part of a night. You're not the night.
Not to say that you can't do that, but I would go a step further and find somebody that you think would be the person to.
So I should pitch myself with somebody else, and then that helps.
Or approach one thing for sure, approach promoters over venues. Like look at the people that are putting on the shows, because more and more it is not the venue.
And that happens a lot in Golden.
Yeah.
Bands will book. I have an open calendar at the Rockwater. The owner and talent buyer is a good friend and partner of mine. So I can go on anytime and put up Menzies Music Hold on a date, and then he might not even know who it is until it's confirmed. And then, but sometimes, and I'm working on something, and then all of a sudden, like I'll see the calendar, I'm like, oh, so-and-so's coming through. Why didn't they reach out to me? They went straight to the venue, which is great. They got the gig, no different, same venue, same, everything. I'll show up at the show because I want to see the band and watch it, and it might be crickets in the bar. And they're like, oh man, I thought like, it's Friday night, where is everyone? I'm like, well, sometimes the venues don't have the time to put in to promote.
Totally.
And we were talking about this last night, Chad. It's simply as much as me sending out a group text being like, you guys really got to check this out. Blah, blah, blah. And that's 10 or 12 people right there. And then I reach out to the local paper and be like, hey, can you run a little thing on this? And there's 10 people. And people are like, oh, I just figured if I could book directly with the venue, you're cutting out this middleman, not intentionally by any means, but it's just like, we are promoters. We've been doing this for a long time. We know what type of music and who to reach out to. And it's specifically geared to that. It's not just a mass general thing.
And as like the profit margins of music squeak ever thinner, I had jobs at the beginning of my career where I was like a support person. I did do social media. I did do communications for a venue. Now more and more, like you have someone managing a calendar who is maybe also doing the social media. 4 jobs is now 2 jobs. Those people are now juggling a lot more. There's less money to go around. But like promoters exist to push the show. That's the reason we do it, because we love it, because we want to see that succeed. So again, look at like who is presenting the shows that you like in that region. Follow those people. See what they're doing.
1 and 2. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to make a mention also that there's some acts or some music out there that maybe they are not very familiar to Canadian audiences just because it's maybe world music or something.
Sure.
We have that. We're a multicultural country, and it'd be great to have more spaces for world music, right? And maybe even approaching it as maybe you don't know my act, but I can bring a really engaged and amazing crowd or things like that, and maybe I don't know where I'm going with this. I guess it's because I'm trying to make a space for
that
for
requires a
music.
champion.
Totally.
Like,
That's exactly the word I was gonna say.
Be that champion.
Be that
Oh, man.
be that champion for that scene in your city. Go reach out to those people. Put the bill together. Approach the venue as a promoter. Because a lot of times, like if you're like, hey, I am putting on these events. It's not a bunch of musicians or one band asking for help. You're like, I want to see this happen. So I've gone out and I've contacted these bands and I want to put a night together. Contact the venue and find out what it's going to cost you to do that. Like, honestly, and that's the thing. Become a promoter, become the champion for the things that you want to see in your city, or, you know, for bands that are coming from other regions. Like, become that person, and people will book your band.
And that's how I started my company, really. It was one of those things where cold calling as a band member was hard. And I'm like, so I just started doing Menzies Music Presents Will Horse, my band at the time, you know, kind of thing. And it was just easier that way. So I became the promoter of this band. I showed up at the venue, they didn't realize I was in the band. I was just promoting the band. And it's great because a lot of times you can reach out and you can do co-pros, you know, kind of thing. You don't have to take all the responsibility. If you have all this work done, all this marketing plan, you have published certain things, you've already done so much of the work, like I said to you, like you've done most of the work for us. Reach out to us, we'll co-pro and do a profit split or something, but then just use that local person as an avenue to tap into all those people. Co-pros are great. I've done co-pros in Vancouver, you know, and even when I was at Timber, sometimes shows would come and we'd, you know, take it to the main buyer and be like, I'll pass. And then there's another fellow that worked at Timber, and Zach and I would be like, do you want to do it? We're like, and we'd do it on our own, you know? And I remember one time he passed on Ancient Shapes, and we're like, okay, we'll do it. And as small, independent guys, we couldn't give the big guarantee that he was looking for, but we're like, Daniel, come, we guarantee you this much smaller than anything you're going to see, but we know the people that want to see you. And we completely filled the Wise Hall, sold it out, made him more than he probably would have made with Timber, and developed a relationship that lasts forever.
That's what I was gonna say too. Sometimes, like in these secondary markets, you do end up like in rooms that don't have the same overheads as big rooms, and I've experienced it where like an artist played 2 nights under a big promotional company, and then went to Cremona and played to an 80-seater and made more money in 1 night than they did in the 2 nights.
Some bands don't need massive marketing pushes and radio plugs. They just need someone that believes in them and someone that knows the exact people that want to see this band. And that was an example that we did, you know, kind of thing. And it happens often, you know. Yeah. And I would reach out to Vanessa when she was booking the Cobalt as well, and I'd be like, hey, you know, get a hold for this day, I get this band. And she's like, is this Timber show? I'm like, no, it's a music show. And she'd give me a shot, and it was just, I knew for sure. I didn't need to go in the big avenue. I was like, I know exactly the 90 people that want to see this show. It wasn't going to sell out the theater, but I'm like, I can guarantee you I'm going to put 90 people in on a Thursday, you know, kind of thing. And then you develop those relationships, you know, kind of thing. So,
coming back over.
Thank you for all this information. Like, I'm simmering with like excitement right now. I feel like R&B music here in Calgary and Canada especially is like a really simmering genre. So I'm super excited to implement some of this knowledge. But as an opening negotiation to say a venue or with a promoter, what is something that is, as a new act going to a new space, what is something that is like common? Is it tickets? Is it just, hey, let's do a free night and just test this out? Like, what's a common negotiation you guys are used to seeing?
That's fair. I mean, looking for a big guarantee can kind of, like I said, sometimes scare you away as a promoter or whatever. If you look into that promoter and you trust and you see the bands and they're similar to you, you feel like they're gonna do the best for you. I mean, I was a band member for so long. You don't want to do anything for free. Nothing for free in this world, in a way, you know?
A door deal is like easy. Like take the money that you earned by bringing people in the door, and then bring in more people. Go connect the people and bring them in.
Yeah.
Like that, and then when people know that they can expect from you that you can draw, 60 people on your own. If they pair you with another artist, it's 150 people. Then people are really comfortable offering you guarantees because they've seen you play. Yeah. They know that you are confident enough in your ability to entertain and to bring people in that they can count on. Like, they can give you $500, so they know they're never going to lose $500 on you unless there's an anomalous, like another competing thing or a snowstorm or whatever, and all of those things will happen. But once people can trust that you are willing to take the chance on your art and that you're not looking for anything other than to have that experience and share your music, just build it.
And trust is a really good word, because just remember, promoters probably lose more than artists do in general. But we'll lose on 2 shows, but if we believe in something, we'll lose 2 or 3 times to see the gains 4 to 6 times. Sugar Kelly's an example of that. I probably lost in the first 2 shows, but now we're all making, because they trusted, they always came to me, always, kind of thing. And it started, like I said, from an open mic where I think I ended up slipping them $100. to a point where over 12 years they're selling out venues and
Oh,
we're all making
I love nothing more than working with an artist and getting to the point where I'm like, I'm not going to do your show. I'm like, I'm just going to show up and be a fan now and watch. I'm
Yeah.
not going to worry about
Totally.
any money because now you're big enough that a bigger promoter or a bigger venue or whoever is taking you on. And that's like, as a promoter, handing that off, that's such a great feeling. And just
Yeah.
being a fan again
Yeah.
and not like pacing and checking door counts and you know like,
Totally.
'cause, like that's the worst too is like on this like on our side like you don't want to let people down. Like I don't say yes to shows that I don't believe in. I will book stuff as someone that manages calendars for venues. I book a lot of things that are not for me, that I understand, that I objectively see this person is passionate about, that I see they have objectively done the work to do. I don't have to like it. In fact, it's kind of better sometimes that I don't, because there are nights that I'm not at the bar and I still need the bar to make money. So the nights that I'm there doing things that I am passionately in love with have less pressure on them.
Yeah.
You just mentioned a word like a bar. Like we're really fortunate right now with ill-fated customs, and there's all sorts of different plays around the country right now that don't have the same overhead as a bar. They've already got an established business, but they have a space and they want to provide community through music, through different forms of art. Those are places that you really want to look for. Those are the places where there is money to be made. They're not looking to like there is a business aspect to throwing shows, and if somebody's putting in all the work, then there's a real chance that it takes like that general contractor model where whoever it is that's promoting is actually going to make a bit of a percentage off of the door person that they hire, and also the sound guy. And that's a tough, you got to be aware of those rooms when you get those offer sheets that come across that seem really inflated. That's a scary place to live sometimes.
Yeah, and you'll see that, and some people don't even realize that there's promoter profits, and they're like, oh, what is the 10% promoter profit? That you're taking on basically all the expenses and vans or whatever, and it's a way that we do need to get paid too. We do need to continue being in business, and it's just a small little percentage of like, trust me, in the end, if we hit all this, we hit that split point. And the nice thing is a good promoter will have that offer sheet laid out. We're like, okay, all we need to do is hit 69 tickets sold and we all start making more money. I can do that.
There's
You know?
always a magic number, like as like a promoter or a booker, when you're looking at the budget of a show, and like that affects like what you're going to offer an artist payment wise. If you're looking at a calendar and you're like, hey, it's Thursday night, like this band is really good, you know, the venue has X capacity. It's going to cost me this much to rent the venue. It's going to cost me this much to put paid promoted ads for the show, you know, like on the internet. It's going to cost me this much to pay like the opening band or the sound guy or whatever. You are working that into a budget as a promoter, and there's always that one magic number where you're like, that's the ticket sales where we start making money.
Yeah.
That's where we end up splitting the profit on it. You're like I'll walk into a show and I'm like, cool, all I need is 75 people to walk in here and pay $20 and this whole night is covered. And as soon as you hit that, you're just like elated. Nothing else matters. You've already covered your guarantees. Anything at that point is just gravy. But until you hit that number, you're just sort of like, oh God, just like 10 more people, please, just 10 more people.
And be honest with yourself as an artist and as a promoter. Like if we were to work together, how many people could you pull in Golden? You know, kind of thing. And how many people do I know in the R&B world that are going to come, you know, kind of thing. So we have to come up with a sort of a budget and an honest number that like, hey, if we hit 50 people, we're both going to be okay. Right. And as long as we think we can do that. If we don't think we can put 50 people, maybe we got to wait until a bigger R&B artist is coming through. I have all your information. We've already had the conversation. We're already on the same page. And then I pick up the phone like, hey, I got so-and-so coming through. Want to come out and open up? Boom, you just got 200 people listening to you. Next time around, we're like, yeah, we put 50 people in because they also saw you, you know? Yeah. And so don't get personally offended if someone says no on the first time around. It doesn't mean they've forgotten about you. It doesn't mean you didn't make an impression on them or whatever. But we are all in the business, the music business, and we do need to survive, and we can't lose our shirts on every show.
Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of shows that I book where I'm just like, I love this band so much. But if not a single person walked in the door, I would walk to the ATM and I would happily pay the best $1,500 of my life to watch them play only to me.
I pulled out money on the way to the venue, knowing that I'm not
can't be every show, and that band isn't going to come back. You know, like.
I think H and Shapes was that for Zach and I. We're like, there's no way that Daniel Romano's coming to Vancouver and we're not going to go to see the show. We just wanted to see the the show.
Yeah.
So even if we had to fork over that guarantee, we would have between the two of us, kind of thing. So we're
Yeah.
fans.
Hi there, I have another question about fees and whatnot. So you were booking shows into the end of 2024, and here we are, not even the end of 2023 yet. What's your best advice to handle inflation or unforeseen inflation?
That is a good question.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at it, if you have a show confirmed or like booked already at a venue, if those rates change at the venue, they usually start from wherever that date is forward. If you're already confirmed, like if you have like a contract with the promoter, with the venue, that's not going to change unless you're working with people that are probably not worth working with. Because if they're so desperate they need to go back and change things like that retroactively, they're probably not in a great place.
Right.
I mean, like, financially, like, a lot of venues and promoters are not in great places because of inflation. But you factor it in for your own expenses, like for travel, for, the cost of gas, for, for paying for a hotel on nights that you need it. Like, all of those are like the variables. But for the cost of putting on the show that you've already booked, that's not going to change. Although, if you haven't confirmed it yet, or you're now reaching out for holds, like, it is possible. Room rates are going to go up. Costs of production are going to go up. People need to get paid more. More costs need to be covered. But, like, if you have something locked in, I think you don't need to be afraid.
The artist
of
is going to
those
take the
things.
loss on the inflation so much because
Yeah.
once it's set, the offer's accepted, the contract is signed. If things inflate, we're going to take the hit.
Yeah.
Not the artist. If that answers your question. And it goes a lot for American bands coming up. That exchange rate is constantly fluctuating. And I remember we used to sit in the office and like every day we would check the daily exchange rate and be like, oh, it's down 5 cents. Let's pay all of our American artists their deposits today. And yet, but the amount of money you'd save by just doing that, kind of thing. And then unfortunately you don't get the same thing on final settlement day of. It's whatever it is day of. But things do change.
We're gonna be around.
Yeah.
We'll be at the ranch, and please come up. Like, I hope this is just the beginning of something. This is just a scratch of the surface. You can find me at Dead End Doings on Instagram. At
Menzies
Menzies
Music.
Music.
Heartache #2 Records.
Yeah. Please reach out because I'm not kidding. I'll give you my spreadsheets. You can have all
We
my
traded
contacts.
spreadsheets
I
yesterday.
got a really quick question for you. Who here has played a ski town? All right.
Yeah.
Where did you play? Just shout it up. Fernie.
Oh,
Cool.
Fernie, Golden.
You played Golden.
Nelson.
Yeah? Nelson. Okay. Great. Yeah. And
Kamloops.
positive experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Golden.
oh, yeah. Nelson, yeah.
Cool. That's great.
And those places are great. Like, I know in Fernie, they have Calgary that's there all weekend. They don't want to give up their rooms on weekends. That is a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, where you've got all the people that have moved to town that you could potentially fill a date if you're looking to make runs. So be strategic in terms of your routing. If you ever need a hand with any of that, I'm happy to. I love
likewise.
chatting that stuff.
Yeah, we did not become promoters because we don't like talking about it.
No, and
And like,
pick up
thank
the
you
phone.
all like so much for listening
Really?
and
Yeah.
hanging out with us. It's been so cool meeting so many of you already, and there's more days ahead, and it's gonna be lovely.
Yeah, if you didn't get what you
Yeah.
need in this hour, please come and ask us directly anything that you need. Yeah. Thank you.
Where did you play in Golden?